Welcome, 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 welcome. It seems that the teaching the last little bit has been kind of more and more revolving, you might say, around the pointer to anchor into what's real, anchor into truth, whatever your understanding of your deepest nature is at this moment, this phase, this level of consciousness, go there as often and as deeply as you can through whatever method is relevant and vital for you. And so I was contemplating that seems to be what feels relevant here and to speak about. It's really not that different than what I've kind of always been saying, but this maybe has a little bit more urgency to it. The times are very chaotic for many of us personally, but also collectively. And same, same. Same, same. What is in one is in the all. So what does that mean? So what does it mean to anchor, I guess would be the word, to give our attention, to devote ourselves to the truth of our being, our shared being. I think it begins with acknowledging that there is what do we want to say, greater power, deeper, that none of us here can actually decide to animate our own life, animate the grass growing, engineer the sun rising, right? And yet we place all this importance on our what we have, and we define ourselves through that, right? You know, I'm a this, I'm a that. This the relative individuality, and I'm not against individuality, individual expression. What a silly thing to be in denial of. But there's something deeper. That which animates, it goes by so many names, right? So much language through the times has been devoted to trying to describe. Some say it's everything, some say it's nothing, some say it's both, some say it's beyond the creator, God, uncaused love, life, that which animates, the empty ground, the dark ground, source, the absolute, beyond, beyond, beyond. Choose some vocabulary that works for you. But in this time, it's sort of critical to acknowledge this true nature, the true nature, while also moving as our individual expression. So it's almost like keeping our eye contemplating the source of reality, as Ajah says, as we follow the impulse of life. The movement of being. And it's not to say that there's some sort of perfect expression of that. Sort of have to give up all kinds of notions of that. It can really trip us up. Perfectionism, victimhood, spiritual bypassing. I don't know, the different little cul-de-sacs and hangouts that the egoic consciousness can get seduced by when it's attempting to stand in the fire of realization. Because make no mistake, as we awaken to, even if it's at an acknowledgement phase, good. And it hasn't really moved into some kind of deep realization of true nature. It's just like there's a sense that there's a greater, I'm going to say power tonight, greater power animating, giving way as life, giving way as being, giving way through and as love to expression, form, a timeless aspect that through the nature of the one who delivers, the one who gives through love, is always lighting the world, lighting, illuminating this moment, the knowing awareness, the presence. That is sort of, that's the home ground, right? So there's all these events coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. We call that ourselves, our life. As we begin to deeply, deeply recognize and realize the abiding nature of true nature. And the essence of that is uncaused love, then the landscape of the coming and going, the landscape of what we might call our humanhood, the landscape changes. And it's not like we are trying to be good people anymore. It changes of its own accord through its own ways and means as one gives over as that and roots into and as that. And if it's in a big wave, then often it's through faith and trust, those old-fashioned words that we root. It might not be some big snazzy realization and flow state where it's like, wow, this is really obvious, I'm not a person, and all the beautiful things that are gifted to us in those big experiences where it really lands and is undeniable. Sometimes it's faith and trust. Sometimes it's recognizing it in the smallest, most seemingly insignificant expression, like this cup holding this water that I then get to drink. The wonder of that. And what is it? How do the seasons change? You know, whatever it is that can kind of break through that, break through our devotion to the grumbling, and the dissatisfaction and the mistrust and the separate, divided sense of me. Because here's the deal. I found something I want to read. I guess it's like an old school poet that I hadn't, somebody named Robert Browning. Maybe that's well known. I don't know. But you know how we've sometimes conceptualized, and it's a worthwhile metaphor. It can definitely feel like something is breaking through the veils of conditioning that are covering the truth, the true nature. You know, like we've talked about opening the curtains, and it's not that the light was ever absent, it's just that it wasn't perceived. So there's that. But I really enjoyed this. There is an inmost center in us all where truth abides in fullness, and to know, rather, consists in opening out a way where the imprisoned splendor may escape, than in effecting entry for a light supposed to be without. Amen. Amen. We are never far, distant, disconnected. We don't have to go on soul retrievals. We can. That could be fun. I don't know. Maybe that's helpful. To try to retrieve something, to try to find something, because we are as we are. It's simply, what is it? Imprisoned splendor. Veiled. Veiled by what? By the conditioning of the separate self, the narrative of the separate self, and the behavior of self-centeredness. Veiled. Veiled by the ideas that point us again and again and again to this idea that there's some sort of achievement, reward, punishment, road to some place other than here. The whole that whole idea. Closer than breath, closer than hands and feet, closer, 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 closer. Naturalness is, true nature is. It can't be objectified because it's too close to ever be an object. It would be like water trying to objectify wetness. That's not a thing. Water can only be wet. It can't have an experience, a subject-object experience of it. That's that's a big understanding. I don't want us to get too caught up there, but each one of us has the recognition in this moment that existence is, I am, you might say, if that works for you, as long as we're talking about the I of the I and not the I of me. We don't manufacture that. Here it is. Something knows. It knows what we call the waking state, the dreaming state, the sound asleep state, all the levels of consciousness are illuminated and lit up by and through and as and from this great mystery. So attending to that, recognizing it, acknowledging this, brings forward a fire, you might say, of many faiths call it a purification. I don't know if that word sits, doesn't sit well for some people, and I get it. But fire when you're in fire. And as Ananda Mahima reminds us, it can be somewhat tumultuous, maybe even frightening, because all of the conditioning that has defined our sense of self is burned in that fire. All of the conditioning that has defined our sense of self is burned in that fire. But only that which by nature can burn, burns. That's her gift to us. It may feel like a death, but only that which by nature burns can burn. The true nature is of not of a coming and going nature. It is. It is. It does not come and go. It does not burn away. The conditioned narrative, the conditioned beliefs, the believer itself, yes, yeah, burns. So this acknowledgement that, there's something greater, and then the devotion to becoming, it's almost like a transparency. We could say instrument, vessel, expression, but it's almost like a transparency, because the personhood, the end of your world, the end of the me world, as Ajahn says, ends. I want to read something here from Meister Eckhart, because this can start sounding like too weird for the ego, too weird for the person who still wants to be in relationship with other people. Beware of the good people who say you should be so perfect that neither joy nor sorrow can move you. They are wrong. There has never been a saint or an enlightened one who was without human feelings. What makes a saint is not the absence of emotion, but not being moved from God as a result of the feelings themselves, either joy or sorrow. Christ himself said, I am deeply grieved even unto death. When your heart is wrung, keep your soul sweetly grounded. There can be phases of total emptiness or total transcendence. Absolutely. It feels like you've hit a escape hatch button and you got out scot-free somehow, even though you're still walking around. Enjoy it while you can. In the world, but not of the world. In the world. Strangely, the humanhood, the expression of what we would have formerly called myself, walks around, talks, laughs, cries, grieves their mother, has periods of illness, shakes like a leaf, whatever your thing is. What is startlingly and shockingly at first missing is the idea that that is me. It just isn't there anymore. It's not there anymore. I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, but if I could impart anything, encourage anything, it would be to attend to the deepest sense of the true nature that is currently vital and relevant for you, and devote the attention, the heart to that. We're bringing how to say it, in this way where the unconscious programming is made conscious in the light of the truth, the true nature. Like Sharon said at retreat, don't go in there as a person. Do not go in there as a person. It's not a person who's going to bear that load, bear that fire, bear that walk. Because the person will find all kinds of ways and means to narrate it through a selfhood that will result in suffering, or as Eckhart Tolle says, it just won't come out very well. It just won't, it won't have a good result. It's not going to go very well. It's not going to go very well. This is why I think, I mean, not that I'm any kind of expert on Buddhism for sure, but emptiness is really emphasized before one, the realization of that before one begins to really dive into the unconscious patterns. Um, so the truth of what we are is not manufactured through external circumstances like cause and effect. It's not manufactured that way. It's not evolved. It's not, it just is. True nature is. It's not something added to us through prayer or supplication or through reward and punishment. It exists as this moment now. But it's often hidden, mostly from view, because it has not been brought forward in consciousness. It's covered, veiled with false evidence appearing real, veiled by the belief in separation and therefore the narrative and behavior of self-centeredness. We're not bad people. A level of consciousness results in a certain behavior. That's the way the world works. People can only see what they can see through the lens of their current state of consciousness. This is kind of a call, I guess, to listen to something deeper. Wisdom without concept, without narrative, without referencing. Awareness without object. It's imperative to begin to recognize true nature if we are to have the capacity to stand in the fire of purification that is the unconscious conditioning coming to light. And we think this is like a real deep walk personally, and it is. But collectively, woohoo! All the beliefs about who we are, what we are, where we've come from, all the history we're all dragging around, that history that we're applying to the now moment, so that we don't have to encounter anything unfamiliar, even if that history sucks. It's familiar. All of the culture of everyone making excuses and apologies for really messed up reality, like that we had a terrible childhood, so we can behave a certain way, or I'm not probably speaking a very popular view right now. It's very easy to grab onto victimhood, but the minute we apply that to our life or anyone else's, we completely cut off the opportunity for redemption, return to originality, what we might call miracles. You can't play the victim card, and the deep idea covering reality that we will be shaped by our history forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and live a liberated life. Those two, yeah, no. Because it takes away all the power, do you see? If we're at the mercy of something out there, There's no power in that. None. None. I'm not, please hear me. I am not denying really difficult life circumstances. That's not what I'm saying. When we begin to have the capacity, the understanding, the knowing that there is that, what did the poet call it? Inmost center where truth abides in fullness. That's the truth. That's who we are. When we begin to recognize that, we have the capacity to tell, to be sincere and integrous about the conditioning that is presenting itself, because we know it's not our true nature. It's an artifact of conditioned belief. But if we play the victim, well, we don't have that privilege, do we? This inner splendor, imprisoned inner splendor that the poet is speaking about, it's the truth, naked and free and liberated of all of that preconception, narrative of victim, perpetrator, this, that, duh, duh, duh. It's all the judgment around all of the reality. And that is the prison. The true nature moves as goodness, not goodness in opposition to badness, goodness, as uncaused love. It moves as originality. It's the brilliance of just an everyday, ordinary act of kindness. Or who knows, maybe a deep calling that touches a lot of people. You just don't know. You just don't know how it will move. But it will move as and beyond these notions of goodness, badness, us, them, right, wrong, all the stuff that just keeps us in this continued dance of and narrative of self-centeredness, contracted beingness. Good news, good news, good news, good news is it's not far. It's the true nature. Shared true nature of all that is. And that's really good news. That's why when somebody comes upon that as a realization, a direct realization of like, wow, all of this power, supposed power that I have given to this narrative that this life has revolved around, all that is just nothing, absolutely nothing compared to the presence of God. It kind of blows your socks off, and it blows all of our theories of how uh how we get things done, who does them, what's actually happening. Blows all the theories about time. Blows all the theories about um oh, how to say it, all the ideas about the shameful path of me. And everything that's happened to me. And everything I have and everything I want to get so that I can get someplace. I I don't know really how to speak about it. I'm doing my best. I've been doing my best now for whatever. Teaching for 13 years. Prior to that, I was trying to talk about it in other ways. A couple of decades, I guess. There's always this sense when I'm speaking about it that the words, if they're run through a mental conceptual framework and then reflected back without any kind of grounded sense, a practice, I guess you might say, of like deeply listening and becoming available to one's own deeper wisdom, one's own deeper wisdom. If it's just kept up here and conceptualized, the words can sound really almost completely opposite of what I'm trying to convey. Almost completely opposite. It's like the same words are used for, it can sound like bypassing, it can sound like I'm, what the heck is she talking about? It's not, grounded in anything. Or, it sure feels like me when I'm going through chemo or doing these really difficult things, or my mother is dying, or, whatever it is. So to try and speak about the actual reality of the human experience, I guess you might call it, although that word gets a little weird, beyond a sense of personal self it's really challenging to speak about. But what I can guarantee is that each and every one of us knows this sense of right here, right now, right here, right now, this knowing. And that can be brought to attention. It can be one can devote oneself to that sense rather than the constant, constant narrative about experience, the constant categorizing of experience, the constant self-referencing, the constant having an experience, bringing it in, talking about it in one's head, and then making a me structure out of it. It's not a failure. We didn't fail somehow. We just got really wrapped up in that process and built this whole world that Aja calls the false self. The whole world, the false self. But we don't have to. And there is another reality where the life, closer than close, uncaused love, closer than close, lives its original glory, its original intent, its original nature through and as this expression, humanity unveiled, humanity unburdened by the false self. But the dissolution of the false self is no joke. It is no joke. It takes a lot of courage. And I personally, here, it takes Sangha, togetherness, and heart. A lot of heart. I mean, they all say it and it sounds dramatic. It's like the case of, saying something where you go, oh, do you really want to say it? But it does feel like death in a certain sort of way. But it's like, when we got our hormones, all of us as teenagers, right? Okay, that was the death of a certain self too. And we all moved right on into adolescence. Through what? The power of that which animates, unfolds, lives its life as this. There is an intelligence that is 100% reliable. But it's not an intelligence that has a self-narrative. It doesn't self-congratulate or shame itself for not doing good enough. There's nothing like that. You know what? There's 70 trillion cells in this particular body within the body of existence. 70 trillion cells, which each cell has 50 trillion atoms. Each atom has however many constituent parts. And we're banking on, the small self, and all it can do and be. And it's not, I'm laughing because of this experience. I'm not laughing at anyone. You gotta laugh. That's why I love Dr. Hawkins so much. He felt, he calibrated humor as a very, very high level of consciousness. Can get you through some pretty deep and wide trenches. So just to end here, I'm going to read something from Joel Goldsmith, my guy. Never get his name right. Because I know where I was going with this. What comes forward with, I say all these words, I do my best, which is, what it is, to try and describe something really quite indescribable without the experience. And then I think the inevitable question that would come to a conceptual mind, it would come to this mind, conceptual mind, is, well, if this true nature is the essence of who we are, then, where is that in war zones and ICUs and, all the stuff, all of the wars. Joel Goldsmith uses the word God for uncaused love, creator, that from which I comes, that which animates. So I'm just going to stick with it because that's his word. And the answer is this: God can only enter the human scene through consciousness, your consciousness and mine. And we have to make our consciousness a transparency through which God can be seen. And then here is the result. Just as the curtains would keep out the daylight and the sunshine, and we in here could be in the darkness with sunshine right outside the window. Yet the very moment we draw the shades, which is the self drawing the shades are a belief in separateness. That's what the shades are. We have the light that is already there, but which cannot find entrance through the curtains. God is closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. The kingdom of God is you, and God is that light which light every place and every person, and God is shut out of our lives. God is shut out of the lives of the entire false self. And God can only enter through the consciousness of an individual who has made himself or herself a fit instrument through which God can appear. Don't take this as like we're failing, please. It's a matter of recognizing what one is in the heart of our being. It's not striving for something that we aren't. It's recognizing what we are. That is what brings it to consciousness. So all the solutions, right? All the, what we would call goodness, it's not absent. It's not absent. It's like, I've said this before, but it's like when electricity was quote unquote discovered. Well, electricity wasn't discovered. Electricity was always there. It just wasn't in consciousness. There was no one there who consciously could conceive of it. There was no avenue of awareness. We're clearing it out, clearing it out. And it can look like a whole bunch of doing if you want it to, because there's, you can have a lot of fun if you want, with rituals and chants and mantras and thises and that's, but really recognizing what one is at the heart of matter and then sitting right down in that recognition and devoting one's self to that, no matter what comes to challenge it. Therein is the practice. without doing anything about improving ourselves or reforming ourselves or purifying ourselves or spiritualizing ourselves, we become harmonious by recognizing who and what we are, not by trying to be better, but by entertaining God in consciousness, by acknowledging God as abiding within and as us. Not in an arrogant way, right? We know that. All the spiritual egos out on the internet, I am God. I am that I am. Caution, we better know what that I means when we say that stuff. Spiritual truths can be conceptualized and co-opted by the narrating ego. Even in our darkest moments, the glory, the splendor, I know it sounds really difficult if we're in a very challenging circumstance, but I encourage you to look for yourselves. Look in those really dark moments, those really dark times. Look within. Without agenda, without expectation, preconceived notions of who and what one is, and just give way to that.